Hey everybody, this is Rydo and we're back to another live stream of Shadowverse. Today is Monday, August 2nd. Starting somewhat late today, just was not really in the mood to get up and distracted myself a little bit. Kind of woke up late anyways, but yeah. So yeah, we're starting a little late. Over the weekend I did play a little bit of Batman Arkham City, although in all honesty, there's not really anything to say around the game. Like, there's like one weird thing I would say I found with the remote batarang, in that it has a just do a 180 turnaround button combination. A lot of the button combinations are just terrible in Arkham City. Like, that the entire control scheme feels wrong and should be rethought. And particularly as the second game in the series, they should have rethought the button scheme. That would have helped somewhat with the free flow beat 'em up nature when you actually get into fights. But honestly, that component also needs to be rethought. In a weird way, I feel like I'm gonna play the Batman Telltale game, or one of the Batman Telltale games, right after playing Arkham City, just to say, hey, this is really what a Batman game should be. Very little interactivity and more of just a cartoon experience, because that's what people... We have a lot of packs open today. Interesting. That's what people really are used to experiencing with Batman, is either you get it told to you in comic book form, or you get it told to you in cartoon form, or you get it told to you in movie form. And whatever variant of Batman you're used to, there's never been a variant where it actually made sense to be Batman. Batman often is a jerk. Like, even as like a police officer in 2021, he is the epitome of a Punisher like bad cop who doesn't stay within the law. First of all, being not duly appointed to be a law enforcement officer in the first place, but in general too, he just does not have a good way in which he treats people. Even if they are bad guys, he often, in Arkham City, every time in Arkham City, he's just knocking people out. He's prisoners that are already in prison. He's just beating them and knocking them out. Sometimes with stealth takedowns, so you're not even giving them a chance to surrender. It'd be nice if some of them surrendered and ran away, but that's not programmed into the game. But yeah, all you're doing really is, for like 3 hours, I was wandering around this forest/aquarium area, and in the forest/aquarium area, I didn't really I really didn't do anything. I'm just getting from point A to point B, solving a few fight concepts. Like, there's been about 3 rooms in which you have to fight people, and then there's a lot of riddle or trophies and a minimal amount of actual riddles. I guess what I'll do is I'll try and get more gold, and maybe in the next expansion we'll open closer to 100 packs. I guess that's probably the best bet. Kind of have nothing super new to do here. We'll just have the daily quest, which seems to be swordcraft and portalcraft. So let's replace one of that so we can see if we can get some overlap. Alright, Shadowcraft or Bloodcraft. 4 victories, and then 5 ranked or unranked. Shadowcraft and Bloodcraft today. Okay. Let's see. Which I guess means we'll start with this one and then we'll go with that one. Very late to the story, they introduce Oracle, who Oracle was, I believe, all throughout Arkham Asylum talking to you and helping you. Which, in the introduction of introducing Oracle, Batman literally says, "Thanks, Barbara," negating the idea of using code names completely in the first thought.
Hey, pal.
And you could totally see that that would have been some director or some writer saying, well, if we don't call her Barbara, how will we even give a wink and a nod that Oracle is actually Barbara Gordon? Which is kind of ridiculous, because then you immediately, when you talk to Oracle, get a character profile of her that literally just tells you that Oracle is Barbara Gordon. It makes Batman seem stupid, because any enemy could be hiding around a corner or listening on a microphone and figure out, oh, Oracle's first name is Barbara? Okay, how many Barbaras are there in Gotham City? 100? Maybe 1,000? Depending on the size of the city. You could easily hunt down and kill Barbaras like crazy. You wouldn't even have to start with a random selection of Barbaras in the phone book. You could start with Barbaras who would just show up on a Google search. And since you know Batman works with Commissioner Gordon, or I think most people know that, then you probably could do enough research in Commissioner Gordon to know he has a daughter named Barbara, and start there. Or you could just randomly kill Barbaras. Same is true if Oracle had done the opposite. Batman would definitely have yelled at her for saying that. Like if Oracle over the comms had said, "Thanks, Bruce," I would not put it past the Joker or Two-Face or somebody to just start killing every Bruce in Gotham. Even if they never really figured it would be Bruce Wayne, just killing Bruce's alone would probably offset Batman. Yeah, which that really highlights the importance of a secret identity if you're going to do secret identities. Well, this is a rush. Or we could do this.
Kinda tickles.
Has this guy even played a character? Let's see. I think that worked fairly well. But yeah, the only thing they introduced is a shark in a flooded area full of water, and the idea of having to pull yourself standing on a platform on top of water, and the shark attacks you in quick time events, but I seriously don't think you're going to fight the shark in any realistic way. I think it was the Batman movie that introduced the idea of jump to shark, so maybe they were trying to make a reference there. But if they were trying to make a reference there, it kind of went over my head even in that case.
Detestable. 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 Detestable.
And I would say in Arkham City, the Penguin is oddly depicted. He has like this glass Coke bottle bottom that he's using as a monocle that seems to just be jammed into his face. And then he has this metal like voice box thing on the side of his neck, as if it was like a voice box or a tracheotomy or something. That it seems weird, to say the least. when you get away from the female characters in the Arkham games being just overly sexualized and look at the male characters, they are overly, like, they're not cartoony enough for my taste, I guess is what I would describe it as. That they're overly hyper realistic, but hyper realistic still trying to intertwine the crazy logic of
Detestable.
like trying to understand the crazy logic of the Batman universe, which has been crazy and weird forever.
Kinda tickles.
Detestable.
No.
Let's go ahead
Detestable.
and kill that too. Perfect. Yeah, I don't know if I wouldn't have enjoyed the Arkham series better if it did look more like the animated series and was colorful and went for more of a Borderlands art style. I imagine Arkham Asylum came out slightly before Borderlands 1, or at least somewhere around the same time, so that the concept wouldn't have even come across their minds to do a more cartoony art style for Arkham Asylum. And once they established that art style in Arkham Asylum, they probably were unable at that point to change anything that drastically.
Did I want gold again?
But yeah, if I was to reboot the Batman series, I would, since you have like the last in this 4-game series so terribly running and so badly made, that making it not realistic and going with a Borderlands-esque cartoon art style would be a very easy visual depiction to say, hey, this is a different type of game, we're going for a different feel here. Batman in general always comes off as feeling like it's trying a little too hard to be edgy, and kind of fails at that. And I don't mean like DC superhero girls or Teen Titans Go cartoony, but you could go with something closer to Batman Beyond or Batman the Animated Series. I think you go Batman the Animated Series because that's really, in my mind, where I think most of your fandom was established, that would be playing games right about now. It's certainly where my knowledge of Batman was established. I've played a lot of Batman games in general, and honestly I'm starting to get worried that I'm putting off the perception that I am some huge Batman fanboy, and the truth is that I really am not. If anything, it's half luck and half the fact that Warner Brothers shoves Batman down people's throats instead of making other content from other characters. Arkham City in general would have been a better game if it was a Flash game. I feel like I'm halfway through the game and I've yet to see anything with Scarecrow, and I feel like there should be Scarecrow sequences, even if you're going to say, well, Scarecrow isn't actually in this game. Instead, we'll just have Scarecrow gas leaking through the pipes or something like that. Like, in fairness though, these Scarecrow sequences were not good as far as gameplay, but they were very good as far as the well, do I want to do that? Do we want to just put another character on the field? Yeah. Like the actual stealth sequences could have been remade. So in the second game, what you could have done is you could have just had Scarecrow appear and cause hallucinations at certain spots, and that would be that. It would just be a nice little cutscene, or a trick. You walk into a room and it looks one way, and then after like a few seconds it appears a different way. Some of the sequences in the first game were maybe too scary for what they were really going for. Maybe they got some feedback there that they didn't like, but they're really listening to the wrong feedback, because I recall they got a lot of feedback. People loved these Scarecrow sequences.
You must make the first move.
Is that how you treat a lady?
So yeah, and I wouldn't be surprised if it does show up. I've still not done anything more with Catwoman or Poison Ivy, so I don't know if she was just integrated via DLC as a small section where you can play as her. And in the original version of the game, you just don't play as Catwoman at all. The entire world is littered with a small selection of Catwoman Riddler trophies that she has to pick up, so that could just have been the Ultimate Edition, adding content, I suppose. And the point in which you do play as her is a point where you could have easily cut that whole section and people wouldn't have noticed. Alright.
Is that how you treat a lady? No way! Cry for me.
I'll see you in purgatory.
Scatter like the
Let's see if we can win here. We've got a decent amount of video game news, so we should just go over the video game news, and we have games from Steam, so we should go over that. I don't want today to go particularly long. I say that every stream, and yeah, I'm still working on this stupid irrigation box, which is just driving me crazy. Like, it's just tight tolerances. Major mistake I realized is that I had been putting a nipple adapter, which is just like a threaded male to male connector for two different standards. There's National Plumb and Thread (NPT). Then there's GHT, which I think is Garden Hose Thread. But then there is also National Plumber Straight, which is slightly like NPT, and so there's lots and lots of different standards as far as how these connectors go. And I just literally forced one connector that was bigger than another into the plastic threads of the electric valves, and now I'm having a hard time trying to get the right thing to fit because I messed up the plastic threads, which that's why you don't want to really use plastic in threaded plumbing, and yet that's really the only option. So at some point here, it may just leak so much that I can't screw it in, and I may just have to buy a whole new thing, which that will suck, because it's already a project that is just like way over budget. But on top of that, it's been the weekend was slow going, and I didn't get anywhere as much progress as I would have liked to do it, and And I just want to be finished with this dumb project. The next one I build will be done completely differently, so I'm past the point in which I'm even learning anything by working on this box. Now I'm just lowering standards. Just trying to get things to fit.
That tears their brains.
My eyes. You will soon
And the biggest lesson to learn here is to
Holding back.
Now I feel like crying.
recognize that the spigot, in whatever direction the spigot is going to push, is not going to be in the right orientation
Hour of judgment.
that it should be in. So in building anything that connects to a spigot, you need a hose. You can't have hard direct connected adapters.
Life's a gamble. May as well
But
have
yeah.
fun.
Honestly, I don't think the project, even in its second form, like doing it a second time, I don't know if it really is any better than just putting a irrigation manifold in the ground. Because once you're in the ground, once you've done all of that, it gives you just so much free room instead of trying to squeeze everything to be smaller. Like, honestly, the whole system could be built as one big block and sold that way. But they aren't. To the fence. This would let me not be attacked, but can I do anything else? Ten random damage to a follower.
Prepare yourself.
Ooh, you have a good eye.
Okay.
All the fluffy hugs.
Hmm. Alright, so let's go through the video game news instead of me just sitting here. It hasn't been announced, but it seems that construction of Nintendo's Donkey Kong theme park world is started in Japan. I think the shame here is that we may be like 100 years in the future from now in a situation where there's basically nobody living on the island of Japan at all. And there's just going to be this monument to Nintendo for kind of no reason. It would be like, hey, let's go to this deserted island to experience this thing.
Flash of metal.
Which that wouldn't be crazy that there would be some theme park on a deserted island.
There is no escape from the apocalypse to come.
Let's see. Hit this one. Can we do one more damage?
Fresh mana melons and potion fruit. The world cycles on.
If Nintendo is making Mario and then a Donkey Kong theme park, if we look at this picture, which is probably a renderer,
We shall.
they're gonna kind of quickly run out of ideas. Like, they don't fully own Pokemon, so I don't think we'd see a Pokemon park quite like that. If this guy beats me, I'm gonna lose it.
Like me.
Like, if there's some way that this guy can get 15 damage plus getting past the ward, that would be insane.
Just like me.
I mean, he's getting close. He would just need to find 3 more damage.
You're left. Oh, waffle cakes.
He'd still have to do 5 more damage, though. I could see them maybe trying to rush a Metroid theme park to get it to coincide with the new Metroid games. Otherwise, they really wouldn't have a reason for a Metroid theme park. I could also see them kind of bouncing between expanding the Mario world and expanding the Donkey Kong world. But I don't think they're gonna like double down on something like Splatoon or Zelda would definitely. You can make a Zelda world that would. We'll stick with the one that won. But yeah, once you get away from Mario and Zelda and Donkey Kong, Nintendo's collection of characters become less and less recognizable. And in a lot of ways, that is kind of the problem, is that the
Appointed sword deserves a pointed response.
Nintendo has just put too many eggs in one basket. Let's see. This obviously can't be that big of an area either. You just have this like big fence here, and then probably a shop and some more shops, but it doesn't really seem like there's even that many places to go. That being said, neither the Nintendo area also doesn't really feel like it is that big of a location. It's not like a Disney World idea. And if I don't know for certain, but I would assume that Disneyland, Disney World did not just start with Main Street and Cinderella's Castle and that's it. I feel like there was considerable number of events and things happening even on day one of the launch, and they didn't grow. If anything, I imagine Disney World took up as much of its space as possible even on day one, and it has just been a constant attempt to
Do not seek what is not there.
It's your throne.
it's been a constant attempt to increase the density of a ride and improve the quality of rides. But like Splash Mountain and things like that, I think were there on day one, and I don't think there's been much significant changes there. And if anything, their return on investment has been fairly great because of that.
It's your throne.
No!
So, you saw through me.
There is something that I'm noticing here looking at this. This looks like it's an explosive barrel, so if there is actually a roller coaster where you go in the back of this and somehow shoot through the air and land on this rail, that would be kind of amazing. Like, I don't know how you would do that. Feels like you'd be going through the water, and I don't know if the Japanese would be particularly happy getting wet, even at a remember, the humidity in Japan is crazy, so getting wet is not something you typically want to do. But yeah, let's assume they don't get wet. Maybe there's a rail or something over here that controls it. Makes it feel like it's in the air when it really isn't. But yeah, I've never seen an actual jump in a in a roller coaster. Probably for good reason.
Fresh manna melons and potion fruit.
Scatter like the blossoms.
Let's move on. Video Game Chronicles says Halo Infinite tech preview reportedly uncovers the possibility of a battle royale audio, which, yeah, I could see them having that in their back pocket, just in case. I don't know though if anybody really is going to believe that battle royale is the right move by the time Halo comes out. That's gonna be the caveat there. Certainly is that that battle royales were pretty much a flash in the pan, and while there is people still playing Fortnite, I assume I haven't heard any new important bit of information reported around Fortnite in at least 6 months. Let's see. Alright, well, I'm gonna do this, and then I'm gonna evolve this,
Flash of metal, a silent night.
and that's going to let me play this,
Are you some sort of imbecile?
and then we'll go ahead and play that.
Go with the wind.
Video Game Chronicles has an article here. Assassin's Creed Valhalla director confirms he's helming the Dead Space remake. This is Eric Baptiste. I don't know how you'd pronounce that, actually. He's the game director role for the sci-fi horror revamp, which one assumes it's still going to be a sci-fi horror game. That'd be really weird if it wasn't.
Allow me to enter the fray.
So what that does say is that he's jumped a shark from, well, not jumped a shark, he's jumped over from working for Ubisoft to working for EA, which seems like going from one company you probably don't want to work for to another company you don't want to probably work for. Although in all fairness, you probably don't want to work for any of the big companies. And at a high level role, that's a different situation than at an entry level role. From what I hear, Assassin's Creed Valhalla was a fine game, although it's just once again not really in the vein of what the original Assassin's Creed games were. So you're creating a kind of weird situation there.
Is sin.
Well, I could evolve that, but I don't think that's
Your head
what
and
we are
body
supposed to do.
part ways.
If you would destroy the garden, how short
Hit
sighted.
this,
Stay safe, my sovereign. How
and then hit
short
that,
sighted.
Splendid.
Got to roam in
and
style.
hit that.
Unbelievable. That soul belongs to me.
There probably aren't going to be added RPG elements to
You've got the
Dead
face of a
Space,
chameleon.
the Dead Space remake, and that's something that was being added certainly to Valhalla and Origins and more grindiness. It would be very bad to see a Dead Space remake that went down that path and
And it's goodbye.
totally
Compliment.
once again tried to make the Dead Space franchise something different from what the fans want it to be. I don't see how you could make the Ishimura kind of this open world environment that you're just going through over and over again to grind, killing necromorphs to get even more currency, to upgrade even more weapons, to create even more different variations on weapons. Even in the first game, there was probably too much of that. And by the time you got to the third game, I'd say that's pretty much all it is. Instead of having good, interesting cinematic horror experiences, you instead are left with just grinding through generic fights with generic generic enemies.
My wings and heart cry for blood.
Each life has a different value.
This was a surprising bit of news from Gematsu. The ESRB has rated .hack//GU last recode for Switch, which would be a collection that includes the /.hack/GU titles, which I don't know if you have a full story at that point as far as the .hack series.
Like the moon on the water's surface.
This is games going back to 2010, so you're 2002, so you're talking 19 years ago. Like on the Switch, the graphics don't have to be particularly that good, so that might be a good system to relaunch them. But nobody really remembers .hack at this point. There is a Steam page, we should go look at that. So it really feels like at this point, if you were going to play the .hack/GU games, you're either doing it out of nostalgia or you're doing it thinking that this is just a generic, lesser known hidden gem of a JRPG. Like this was released in 2017. The animes of .hack had always this problem of there being a lot more talk than there probably should be. And I just don't think you're going to run into that issue so much. And see, this is not just showing the entire multimedia universe of .hack with magazines, TV animations, movies, and games. And the games in themselves were pretty grindy and probably had far fewer cutscenes. So you have .hack, .hack 2, .hack 4, .hack Magnet, then you have GU, then .link, then you have a Blu-ray movie, and they're putting these all in the same order. And then all you're really getting is the GU games, which is not really connecting everything. And if we were to look at this publisher, they don't even have .hack. You would be better off just getting into the Tales of series, or worse, getting into the Sword Art Online series, as far as in a trapped inside a video game type games. Sword Art Online is trapped inside of a video game. I don't think the Tales of series is. But yeah, or you would frankly be better playing Ni no Kuni too. You're not trapped in a video game in that world, but yeah. Let's see. I'm trying to see if there even are the other .hack games listed for sale, and maybe they're not even sold by Bandai. Let's see, 2012 is as far as this list even goes. How's that work? Games RPG games, 106. Still only going back to 2012. So yeah, I can't even find out if there is a .hack. And see, here you have a positive review that just kind of puts it straight. It's possible to like and enjoy the GU games as standalone series. However, if you want to understand a lot of the references made throughout the game, it's recommended to have played the first game series and watched .hack/roots anime. If you're up to it, the .hack/sign anime, which is the only one I ever saw, is also worth watching, as it is the very first portion of the .hack story. If you don't have time for all of that, reading a summary of each of these would still help. There's also the terminal disc on the main menu, but not everything is unlocked right away. It has recap videos. If you're able to use NVIDIA, you have to manually add the game to it, and there's even a lovely guide. It makes the game a lot better. Otherwise, it's slow even on a decent PC. And see, then this descriptions goes in further and further to just explaining the entire story and how the game works. What's funny here is that this is potentially a case of turning what at one time was a heavily pushed game by Bandai Namco into just Steam shovelware. I didn't move fast enough because of the fact that they really haven't supported the .hack series. On the other hand, if I was going to ignore the graphics and ignore potential improvements to RPG mechanics that have obviously, hopefully, happened over the last 19 years, I would say compared to the hack, the .hack series stays in the same video game and the same theme a lot more than the Sword Art Online series. Because the Sword Art Online series, particularly in anime, after a couple seasons went into a completely different game, and then it went into a different game, and we honestly may be into the 4th or 5th different game that you go into as far as Sword Art Online, which was weird in particular because one of them was a gun shooter game, so it doesn't even make sense to be called Sword Art Online at that point. Whereas at least the .hack series is a high action hack and slash RPG game. So yeah, but you definitely only have a certain amount of time in your life to play JRPGs. There's too many JRPGs out there, and I don't think people are going to be able to play them all, not in a reasonable time. Right, well.
Prepare yourself.
Detestable. I never get a chance to speak.
Do this.
Did I want gold again?
Moving on, Gametsu says Nippon Ichi Software, or NIS, has launched a new title teaser website featuring security camera footage, a girl in a body. Looks like it's an isometric kind of RPG game. Yeah, security camera footage is not really moving much. If anything, it looks to me like it is a teaser for some kind of horror RPG Maker experience. And that's pretty much it. It definitely feels like one of those games that they'll talk a lot more about later, and they'll probably talk about over and over again, and it very possibly could get canceled before actually even getting released, and it very possibly could turn into something completely different than that teaser. And there really isn't a lot of nutritional value, for lack of a better term, as far as a teaser in general, but that kind of teaser in particular. Gamatsu says, a physics-based multiplayer party game, A Gummy's Life, is coming to the PS5, Xbox Series, PS4, and Xbox One in 2021. So, yep. Yep, it looks like yet another player versus player experience. They all seem to want to go in the weird direction for some reason. I don't know why. You know what I need to do is just cover video games that came out on Steam. So I'm going to just try and focus on that. And we may actually leave some news for Wednesday. System Shock has been listed as coming out summer 2021 on Steam, I guess at this point. I mean, I could put it on the fall list. I'm not sure if any of these videos and trailers and screenshots are new. I definitely don't feel like I want to play any of the previous System Shock games. Like, I own the current System Shock. I think there's a remaster still in development. Yeah, there's System Shock and then System Shock 2 Enhanced Edition, I believe. So, if I do get this new remake of System Shock, then I probably would just want to spend a small amount of time looking at the first versions of the game and then play the new version of the game. And if I was ever like so enthralled with a System Shock game, which in a lot of ways was the spiritual successor to spiritual predecessor to BioShock. Like, I could see myself playing the first game and then going and playing the original version of the first game, playing the remake and then playing the original version of the game, just doing it backwards and seeing if there's any historical reason to play that way. That would leave me with kind of this great opportunity to rage quit or just give up at a certain point. At any point I stop having fun playing the original version of the game or the remake of the original version of the game. I don't think there's really a reason to play the original version of the game, as far as I know. Next we have a game on Steam called Donutus Simulator, not Donut Country or Donut Simulator. It just looks like a low polygon asset flip game. $5.99 English only. One of the games that I dismissed as an asset flip game was still an asset flip game, certainly, but I saw someone actually review it, and it kind of surprisingly did have more gameplay to it than I would have thought. But I don't know if that's really something that should surprise me that much, because there is always been this high possibility that I dismiss a game as being a asset flip game where you just run around shooting zombies, and there are several more gameplay mechanics that have been added, but it still, through its screenshot presentations, is still best described as a game where you run around and shooting zombies. Do we want to do this? I don't think so.
Only what is necessary.
Here we have something called Epsijason Dion Lodge. I don't even know how you pronounce that, but clearly doesn't look like it's visually polished. It seems to be a collection of mini games. Maybe some kind of Swedish lodge, Polish lodge would be my guess, since it supports English, Japanese, and Polish. $4.99. Yep. Next we have Operation Airsoft, which again can be dismissed as an asset flip first-person shooter. I don't know why these screenshots aren't loading, but I also kind of don't care. Early access, free-to-play, third-party account, PlayFab, English full audio. I feel like PlayFab.com in particular would be a good target of Steam just saying, no, we're not going to allow you to force people into third-party accounts. It's one thing to have Origin and EA and Ubisoft and require Origin and Uplay and things like that. Those are big ticket players, but PlayFab's kind of unheard of, or itch.io account is another one that I think Steam could get away with just saying, no, we're not going to allow third-party accounts unless you contract with us directly. That being said, it's not like there's a ton of games that require third-party accounts.
Punish the wicked, spare the innocent.
Next we have a game in Steam called Rio Raised in Oblivion, which seems like it's probably a first-person shooter set in a collapsed Rio, which is believable. There was an infection in Rio de Janeiro, and government built a retaining wall. $22.99. It's an MMO. English, Portuguese, Brazil, Spanish, Latin America. Graphics here don't look terrible, but I imagine it's probably a fairly small game area for an MMO. At a certain point, I don't know if you want any real-world location to be your world in an MMO when you consider like Azeroth in World of Warcraft as just this place that is huge and has tons of dungeons and has has expansions that add more land, continents, and masses on rare occasion. That is also one of the things about Arkham City, is that inside the museum, it is much bigger inside than it is on the outside. I would say it is at least 20% larger as far as square footage on the inside than it is on the outside, because the overworld design obviously is designed so you can get around from point A to point B efficiently, and the inside is a dungeon which needs to be big just to have the feel of good content.
Fresh manna melons and potion fruit.
Each life has a different value.
Let's see, are we gonna be able to do anything here?
Scatter like the blossoms.
Fame or infamy. Let's
That's
have a look-see.
pretty much true for, I think, most games. Most dungeons are bigger on the inside than the outside. If you can transverse the outside of a dungeon,
Like the moon on
it's
the
not
waters.
really worth the effort to try to make them feel perfect. I think Darksiders 2 was kind of a great example of a game that tried to make all the dungeons the same size inside and outside, and what it particularly did was just create very large open world areas on the outside that didn't have a lot going on, and often you would have to block off 3 different walls of the dungeon so that it could go further into those distances.
Let the duel begin.
Mother, father, come on.
Yeah. So much so that in Darksiders 2 you're using the horse a lot. Moving on, we have a game on Steam called The Trader, which seems like it's a zombie defense game where you build a weapons store and trade with people. Like, but also zombies attack. Which really just makes it feel like it's an asset flip of several different things. They're saying comparing it to Borderlands. That's a terrible comparison. $8.99 English full audio. The one thing I would have liked to see in Darksiders 2, and I said this when I was covering it several times, is that if they were going to have the dungeons just always be loaded and visible from the open world, it feels like there should have been several places where you would have gotten Metroidvania-esque abilities to enter the dungeon from a different direction and find some collectible or something. Or just enter the dungeon in general from that direction. Of course, that would take a lot of balancing to make sure that you couldn't skip the vast majority of the dungeon and disappoint yourself.
Did I want gold again?
Next, we have a game on Steam called Smithy Wars, which just looks like an RPG game of no interest. $13.49 English only. Here we have one called Kana Kana, which looks like it's a Japanese only Kana Kate study guide game. 99 cents, Chinese only. Okay. Here we have another one that's all in Asian letters, which looks like a SimCity clone for $5.39, Chinese only. Man, if they hadn't started getting all these Chinese games, there would have been considerably fewer games to talk about. Here we have one called Crimson Coliseum, which just looks like it's an RPG Maker game with anime girls. Don't let the outfit fool you that this really is going to be a very boring, generic RPG Maker experience. $13.49 English, Japanese, and Chinese. I don't know if it's going to be boring or not. That's going too far to say that, but
Let's do that again.
It is definitely not something that has pleased many people, as it is mixed already with 37 reviews. Okay. You still need 2 more Bloodcraft or Shadowcraft victories. Here we got Gachimuchi Life Simulator, which looks like an RPG Maker garbage game. Actually, it doesn't even look like it used RPG Maker. It just looks like an 8-bit RPG garbage game. $1.39 English only. Definitely just a troll game.
Come on.
Yeah. Kind of games that probably shouldn't be allowed. When you have Sexnator, adult sandbox RPG released, like developers like this should be looked into a little bit further as far as Valve is concerned. Although, in all fairness, I think it is worth asking the question, which is better for the world? Valve employees focusing on the Steam Deck and creating the Steam Deck, or Valve employees curating games that won't be seen by most people anyways on Steam? Like, I think most people would say the Steam Deck. Here we have a jigsaw puzzle game for $2.09, bunch of languages, same old, same old. It's actually not even a jigsaw puzzle, it's a block puzzle game, but people usually don't even know the difference.
Lots of bones, but make it fashion.
Yeah. So yeah, as much as I would like to see either no curation whatsoever, just fully embrace the libertarian mentality, and every game is allowed on Steam, even things that might be possibly illegal, which that Wild West concept doesn't really work for most businesses, or it doesn't work for most businesses for very long. Or I would like to see them more curate their experiences. But at a certain point, I think I could definitely be convinced that my opinions as far as what games would be curated would just be opinions, and my opinions shouldn't be made into laws, even though we have seen some awful garbage games. I think performance metrics might very well solve this problem. If a game is in a probationary period allowed on Steam, and then 30 days later, if it hasn't sold even one game, one copy, it gets removed or archived and just not shown on the store, that would be fine.
Oh, let's do that again.
Am I having network issues? No. Like, I've been resetting my router like crazy, but not because of network issues, just because of the USB hard drive being plugged into it messing up. There's some level of what I messed up as far as, I think the null device is what I think I messed up there, that was causing it to have hard disk errors when trying to write a lot of files to the hard drive. But yeah, there is kind of a lack of stability. Honestly, it may not even have anything to do with the null device, and that was just a side issue, or it may have been that the WinSCP program I'm using to move the files from Windows to Linux is the problem. It may have to do with UTF-8 or a different file font format or encoding format in the file names, because I have noticed that a lot of the file names do have some weird umlauts and accents and things like that, and I very well may need to just figure out a way to tell it, when you try to copy a file over like this, translate that into just a standard ANSI character.
I do not know what winds whisked me here.
Because WinSCP doesn't seem to really handle... It handles some characters, but not all of them. And honestly, it's just going to be a bulk renaming issue. And so I've been messing with that more than I should. I'm renaming files so that they'll actually work on Linux and Windows and be read. Here we have a game on Steam, VR Modern Wars Advanced Under Air Raid. I don't know what Advanced Under Air Raid really means. I guess you're just advancing in tanks while an air raid is happening. It's $1.19 VR game, which is way too cheap. Bunch of languages. Here we have a game called Everslot, which looks like it's a fast-paced run and jump platformer attacking game, rated very positively. It's early access. It's VR, $16.99, which is much more realistic for a VR game price. Let's put this on the follow list. This looks polished. Now, inherently, you have the question about, does this VR game cause motion sickness? And that is kind of the catch-22 of any of these scenarios, is that you just don't know. I guess I have to do this.
Kinda haunted. No, literally.
What do we have here?
Just go and hit that, I guess. Yeah. You either make a boring VR game where you stand in one place shooting a bow and arrow or shooting a gun or something like that, or you make a high action movement game, which probably it immediately feels like it might cause motion sickness.
This'll be over quick.
Or you make a teleporting VR game, which feels awkward and doesn't cause motion sickness, but then doesn't feel like a good game. And often the stand in one place games are games where you can teleport yourself. So there's not a huge amount of difference between those.
I'm coming. Detestable. Detestable.
Maybe this time I can fake.
Detestable. Detestable.
What do we have here?
You know, I'm noticing that Shadowverse now lets me preload in the movements. It hasn't let me do that up until this point. Finally. Like I'm able to just drag things while the other things are animating. Here we have a game on Steam called Geisterland, which looks like it's a badly drawn horror game. I think it's probably best described as maybe a point-and-click adventure. $3.59, English only. Here we have a game called Jump Boy, which doesn't look visually polished to be good enough to interest me. $1.99, bunch of languages. Thumbnail looks good. This game definitely does not.
Must be my God.
Best of luck to you.
Here we have a game called The Odd Tale, or An Odd Tale. Looking at the screenshots though, it still seems like it's just a asset flip game. Yeah. Low polygon asset flip game. Free to play, single player, English only. I don't even know why you would have it free to play. Let's see. That seems like just a waste of everybody's time to even make a game if you're not going to try and sell it. But I guess there are just some people out there that need to build their resumes up, so.
Prepare yourself.
Maybe this time I can fade completely.
Let's see. Here we have a game called World Pirate Wars, which looks alright if it was a 1990s game, but looks pretty bad as a 2021 game. Doesn't look like there's much gameplay mechanic here, just ships flying, trying to shoot each other. Free, single player, requires third-party account. Again, why even make a free game? I guess they're claiming that it's going to be an open world game at some point, but it's not marked as early access. Here we have a game called The Village. I imagine there are companies out there that literally are contractually obliged to publish a game in a certain amount of time, and so they just throw it out on Steam without any concern whatsoever. Or I wouldn't be surprised if its publishers are contractually obliged to publish a game, but they don't want to put any money into it, so they put it out on Steam Direct, and then they don't put any advertisement behind it, and they don't try to sell it for anything. I imagine there are some terrible contracts out there where if the game is put out for free, then the publisher doesn't have to pay any kind of royalties to the developer, because the percentage of 0 in sales is still going to be 0. But that would screw over the publisher as much as it would screw over the developer, so it's kind of a crazy thought. But publishers have been known to be kind of jerks, so I wouldn't be surprised if some of them do something like that, or have different reasons that I am not understanding to do something like that. Here we have a game called The Village, which is some kind of top-down RPG of no interest. It's $4.99, English and French. Here we have a game called Rift Runner, which seems to be a precision platformer of some visual polish. I don't think, though, I would want to play a game like these, because these games always frustrate me too much, and require a lot of trial and error, and it's just not the kind of game I want to play anymore. But if it is the kind of game you want to play, it's early access and free to play with in-app purchases, which is also a weird way to do that. I don't know how you get a good business experience that way. Alright, well, let's see. Evolve. Hit this one. Hit this one. Hit this one.
Eyes close.
And then
Are you in need of medicine?
You look kinda haunted. No, literally.
then next turn I could play this, but I probably wouldn't want to. I probably want to play this and then this. But if I play this, then it won't work.
Virtue, tolerance.
It doesn't matter, I'm about to lose.
Nice swordsmanship.
Well, at least we got a complete game there. It was going to get slightly annoying if we were just getting quick disconnects. Although, it would only be slightly annoying to get quick disconnects. I'd be more than happy to sit for 3 hours straight getting quick disconnects and working my way up to master's level in the process. But I think even Shadowverse servers might say there is something weird going on there.
Pointed response.
I guess you're looking for a fight.
Next, we have a game on Steam called Sword Soul Duel, which seems to be asset flip fairies fighting in the middle of the screen and then just a lot of visual flair. Maybe there's a match 3 concept on top of this. But yeah, this is one of those examples of a game where it's so overly visually busy that you really can't even see what's going on. Like, I like some of these animations, and if the camera was more zoomed in and you saw a single one of these animations and it was really shown well, that might be like something that's really cool there. But being zoomed out, seeing it happen all at the same time is too much. $34.99 online PvP, supporting Chinese only. And yeah, that is a shame with Chinese games. Even when you do find a good looking Chinese game or something that seems like it has a slightly good idea, it is usually just so overrun with so many other bad ideas because they just don't have the experience. They don't have the decades of making games other than making NES clone, Famicom clone games for decades. And that 100% has to do with the censorship and the outlawing of video games in China. They've literally held back the progress of their own people as far as programming video games, if arguably not in a lot of other places too.
I'm through.
On the other hand, there is a lack of a welcoming attitude that you can have with a country like China to bring them into any economic market or any world economy when you know that every single piece of China's economy is being manipulated to enact real economic warfare against the rest of the world. And you only have to look at the latest instances of China like not allowing a couple more Marvel movies to be released, or which that seems to happen every couple of months. A couple more Western movies not allowed to be released in theaters in Japan. I mean, in China. Thus creating this imbalance where Hollywood is constantly trying to kowtow to the Chinese market and getting treated unfairly even in the effort. Anyways, not to get on to a rant, we have a game here on Steam called Saving Ghost, which seems to be a ghost that is trying to platform in a lot of different places. I don't really get it. I don't get why you would be playing as a ghost. The platforming just makes it a 3D platforming game, but it really just looks like it's an asset flip to make a 3D platforming game, which honestly that's probably harder than it seems to get assets that a character can actually walk on and not just fall off the edge of. It's $1.99, it's English only. There just doesn't, on first glance, seem to be a visual theme that makes sense as far as why you're playing as a ghost. If they could answer that part, I think I'd be maybe more interested in the game. Slightly more interested, not really though. Next we have Hyper Dungeon Crawler, which just looks like a cheap dungeon crawling game. $5.24, English, Japanese, and Chinese. Here we have a game called Cube-E, which looks like it would cause motion sickness even in me, flipping the screen up and down like that. And it's labeled as a precision platformer, and it doesn't look particularly interesting as far as the screenshots. It's English and Russian, $5.99. Okay. We could hit that. We could play this. Or we could do this.
I'm home.
Is that how you treat a lady?
Next, we have a game on Steam called Duamo, which looks like some kind of fast-paced Tetris game. Let's watch this video a little bit more. You're rotating the world to get to the right part of the square to move things around. Well, that definitely is a different idea. Certainly. I don't know how many levels you can have around this. $4.49, 77 levels, English only. This definitely feels different. It's like telling you where to put the pieces and you have to rotate the world. I want to put this on the follow list because it definitely does feel like a different attempt at something.
Take only what is necessary.
Is that how you treat a lady?
Let's see. Next we have a game called Color Blend FX Desaturation Prologue, which I don't know if this actually is supposed to be a game or not.
Scouting's my middle name.
Yeah, they're calling it a game, but then they're calling it Color Blend FX. I feel like you would just call the game Color Blend. So it's a mostly empty world, and at some point maybe you bring back color to the world. You don't seem to just jump into the paints and then paint your body and paint the world that way. It's a prologue game. The real game is coming out in 2022, English and Bulgarian. It does. I guess you do jump into the liquid colors and paint your body. Which, okay. There's a thought there. I'll wait for the real game to come out though. I don't see a need to. I don't see a real need to do.
Scatter like the blossom.
To put the prologue on the fall list.
Crazy,
I'm home.
See, next we have a game on Steam called Really Weird Pool. Which, okay. This is a concept I haven't seen implemented. It feels like something that should just be in better pool simulators out there.
Stop standing in place.
There is a argument potentially for making circular pool tables instead of rectangular pool tables, although it'd be harder to build a circular pool table. particularly the rails. Maybe a hexagonal pool table instead. $3.99, English, allegedly full audio. I'm going to put that on the fall list. That might be enough of a gimmick to make it worth looking at for a spotlight. Alright, well, if I play this, and then I play that, and then if I play this, next we have a game on Steam called Sweeping the Ruins, which looks like a real game. Yeah. We've gotten down to the point where we're basically not even seeing real games. Third-person action adventure game where two players must cooperate together, which maybe means we really can't play it, unfortunately. And this could be like one boss fight and that's it. Like this could be more of a vertical slice. It's free. It's single player or online co-op. It is a student project, and that explains a lot. 28 students to make this. In a lot of ways, I think a lot of games of this quality probably are made by about 28 people, even in big time paid development. So there is this odd situation where more cooks in the kitchen would just spoil the broth a lot more than adding any valuable addition artistically.
I shall give birth to a new world. Now I know your scent.
Okay, that worked. It's a shame that the first game, and possibly the only game we see today, is that actually looks like a game as a student project. Like that does definitely speak to an imbalance of people who really want to make games versus people who are just trying to sell asset flips on Steam. And clearly there is still the perception, whether it's true or not, that you can make money selling asset flips on Steam because people are still trying it. For example, BS Surfing here, which looks like they've taken some knife skins from CSGO and some character models from CSGO and made a parkour running game. And this time it looks like Minecraft assets. Something similar to that.
The uncharted desert awaits.
Yeah.
I hope to stop standing in peace.
Nothing here looks interesting. No reason for a game like that to be in early access. $5.39, English only. This guy spins his knives in his hands, but I don't think he ever actually uses the knives. Alright, well, let's go with
The
this.
hour of judgment has come. At least we got our mark.
See. Next we have Valley General Hospital NIVR, which seems to be more of an educational, this is really how you act as a doctor or nurse. I feel like a lot of these things though couldn't actually be high level education. They could be low level education for kids in high school, kids earlier, but I think you get into the minutia a little too much if you tried to make a real world simulation. But maybe they need to make something like that, where you have to get into the minutia and make sure you do every single step accurately. There's plenty of medical service providers out there that aren't following a workflow and aren't following procedure. $42.49 for VR, Oculus Rift, English only, full audio. I want to put this on the fall list, and honestly it may never get reviewed, but I still might want to put it on the wish list if I was to ever get a VR headset, which is a big if. I could rush this. Let's see. Could I hurt myself?
Vows, promises of Poxide. Allow me to take my cut.
Your head and body must part ways.
I promise nothing. Allow me to take my cut.
Now I know your scent.
If I could play this next turn, maybe I could do something.
Did you send this breeze?
But yeah, this card only works if I had cards that would hurt me. Like, it says whenever you take damage, reduce the leader's maximum defense by 3. So
We're the best hunters out there.
if I just take 1 damage right now,
Such is temperance.
but then they killed that character, so that destroys that idea. Right, well,
Best of luck to you.
I don't see any better way for that to have gone. Next, we have a game on Steam called In My Defense, which looks like a side-scrolling shooter game. It doesn't look very visually polished. $4.24 English only. Here we have a game called Sedomari, which looks like a horror asset flip game if I was to guess, or just a Japanese horror game in general. It is slightly different because this is like a horror game set in a Japanese or Asian style building instead of being typically set in a Western style building. I don't know if that's a big enough difference. It's $4.49 English, Japanese, and Chinese. I guess I have to put it on the follow list and give it a chance, but I'm not particularly thinking there's much there.
You're a solid fighter.
There we go. Let's see. Next, we have a game on Steam called Puzzle Soccer, which seems to be some kind of weird puzzle game looking like soccer, but I don't know how you really would be able to play this. Like, the actual gameplay mechanic here doesn't make any sense. And yeah, we're still having network issues. I guess the idea is that characters move a certain pattern. So you get a card, you have to move the ball from one place to the next. Yeah, it kind of feels like this is some kind of board game that's been converted to a PC game, but it's $1.79. English only. I'll put this on the follow list. Yeah, the person disconnected.
My blade has paid your passage into the
You know,
afterlife.
I am noticing that I do get some rendering lag and encoding lag, but it's still 0.0%. And drop frames because of network is exactly 0 frames have been dropped because of network. So my quality of service setup as it is now seems to have worked very well. And speaking of worked very well, I don't know what happened there, but we are already an hour and 29 minutes. Let me just double check. Have we really only been going for an hour and 29 minutes? Yes. We are already done with the challenge. So at that point, I guess you just keep on playing something until it stops working, and then we just play ranked to try and get up in the ranking. And that really highlights how Hearthstone in particular, when it had a large amount of disconnects happening, Hearthstone was so great about that and getting those daily quests done. Although in all fairness, Hearthstone didn't give you actual 3 different daily quests every day, so you didn't have to play that much anyways. Whereas Shadowverse really wants you to spend a lot of time playing Shadowverse. Here we have a game on Steam called Seafarers, which looks like an interesting pirate sim game. $4.99, English, allegedly full audio. We'll just play today moderately while we try to burn through the news. And if we can actually get through the news fairly quickly, that would be great too. Speaking of news, let's go over some news. The VR company InDreams has opened a fully remote development studio to diversify its portfolio, according to Gamasutra, which, okay, makes sense. More stories have emerged from Activision Blizzard in the days after the walkout. This is July 30th article from Gamasutra. If you want to read it, read it. Gamasutra says initial Steam Deck success could open the door for Steam Decks from other manufacturers. I don't see that happening in the next 2 years unless they do it very, very cheaply. Like, I feel like you're going to run into the exact same problem with the Steam machines, which is that the Steam machines just didn't make as much profit as computer manufacturers wanted. There is also increased requirements being implemented as far as power efficiency. That probably won't really affect too many gaming PCs, but it's been reported like it would, just because of clickbait. But what it would affect is, and seems to have affected, is people like Dell selling poorly made, poorly efficient PCs, gaming PCs, or PCs they're calling gaming PCs, that have been maximized. I'm gonna pour some water here. Yep. Like, these Dell PCs are almost certainly have been designed to maximize profit over any kind of level of standby efficiency. I think it is really just standby efficiency that the legislation that California put in place is interested in, is that they want the PCs to be less efficient when they're in standby mode, and theoretically they want PCs to go into standby mode a lot more often than well, mine does, because I never put mine in standby mode. That would crash so many games going to sleep or suspend mode. Although arguably what they mean by standby mode may actually be when the PC is not actually turned on at all, compared to sleep mode, which means the PC had been turned on and went and booted and then went into a sleep mode that would awaken when you move the mouse cursor, or hibernate mode, in which the PC had been turned on and then booted and then told to go into hibernate mode and then turn on when you press the power button. So there could be different indications of that. Theoretically, I think Valve would like to see other manufacturers do a good job of making good Steam Decks, but they probably don't want to see companies doing a bad job or cheap job making bad Steam Decks. There is a possibility, I imagine, that you could create a new category of PC. Tablets, in a lot of ways, and ebook readers as gadgets have not been hugely adopted by people. Nowhere as much as cell phones. And cell phones really became the replacements for PC for a lot of people. Chromebooks have not been really adopted too. Ideally, a manufacturer would have liked to sell you a home PC, a Steam Deck, a Chromebook, a laptop, and just tablets and cell phones and ebook readers and all of those different individual things, but very few people would have any real need for all of that all those varied versions of oh, seriously, I should have evolved it. I think it is definitely too early to be pushing the idea of manufacturers making a lot of Steam Decks. And I don't know what manufacturers you want to see doing that. Do you want to see Apple making a Steam Deck? Maybe you do, maybe you don't. Do you want to see...
This is where I truly shine.
Farewell, dragon.
like, do you want to see potentially...
Flash of metal aside.
Dell making Steam Decks, or Toshiba, or HP, or do you want to see Samsung, or Google?
Didn't go so well.
Like, I don't know who the real manufacturer is that anybody would have any real loyalty to. Do you want to see a TCL and one of the cheaper off-brand electronics manufacturers making Steam Decks? Or do you want to see some control there? Like, the only company I could even think... Well, there's 3 companies I can think of off the top of my head that I would want to see make Steam Decks. And those 3 companies are Nintendo, Microsoft, and Sony PlayStation.
I shall cradle the world once
Like,
more.
if each one of them decided their next console, in at least the mobile form factor, is going to be their own custom Steam Deck thing. And Valve has brought together the always separated video game Goliaths, then that would be amazing, certainly. But that's about the only people I could think of. So we do this. We can't evolve that. We do this.
Void claws, terminus.
So we'll get rid of that. And then hit that.
Save yourself.
That. And that. Wow, that worked better than I thought it would. Gamma Sutra has an article. Niantic has reverted the Pokemon Go's pandemic changes despite player pushback. So players are not happy that they have undone all the assistance they did for the pandemic. In a funny way, this is the exact same attitude in video game form that I have seen a lot of people online push, certainly. In general, I guess it's more right-leaning New York people, and maybe in New York their perception is just different because of where they live. That's probably an understatement to say the least. But there has definitely been this narrative that the pandemic is just over and everything is just back to normal. And it's just not the case. Like, the pandemic won't be over until either everybody who isn't vaccinated dies, or enough people get vaccinated to get herd immunity, which is the same thing that's been said since day one. And yet people have tried to push the narrative and nudge and renegotiate. And it has caused at least in the United States, a major uptick in pandemic-related infections.
A pointed sword deserves a pointed response.
So it is,
This one's for my family.
in a weird way, you normally don't talk about morals in video games because effectively they are just capitalistic products that are pandering a lot on the idea of greed, and because they're pandering a lot on the idea of greed, they are inherently immoral anyways, as much as McDonald's is immoral, and it gets very complicated when you start to trying to boycott every capitalistic company because of their own greed. But you're going an extra step, certainly, to get people addicted to a game. And let's face it, people who play Pokemon Go and are still playing Pokemon Go at this point are addicted to the game. And now you're forcing them to make a hard decision between either suffering in the game or going out and risking their actual physical well-being. And for most people, that shouldn't be a real challenge or decision. But for some people, I think it is more of a decision than they'd like to admit.
Your lucky day, my friend. You've been chosen.
Leaving that there, though, we have a game on Steam here called God Killer, which looks like it is a side-scrolling hack-and-slash game of no real quality. What's funny is I'm fairly certain there is another game called God Killer already, or is it called God Eater? $2.69 English full audio. I know there's a JRPG game either called God Killer or God Eater. Let's see. Well, we can do this,
At least we got our mark.
and we can do
You
this.
must make the first move.
We could evolve this next turn.
You've been chosen. Time to splash out.
Let's see. Next, we have a game on Steam called Formal Hat Flowers, which looks like it's a platforming game.
Be gone.
Yeah. Atmospheric is what it's described as, although I would kind of just say they probably don't have any textures, looking at the background of the sky being just a color gamut. I did watch a YouTube video talking about how maybe I should install specific color profiles for my monitors. I don't know if that would mess up the recording software in any way, so I'd be a little iffy on doing that, certainly, but it'd be an interesting thought to try and color balance my monitors a little bit better. Alright, well then I guess what we want to do is hit this.
Already a proper lady, you know.
What does this say? When this follows increased restore X. Well, I don't know how you would increase this specific follower's
Time to
ability.
splash out.
Could have attacked that guy for 0, I guess. Yeah, Formal Hat Flowers is $7.69 English only. That's way too expensive.
I shall cradle the
Here we have a game called Be the One, which looks like a top-down twin-stick shooter of no quality. $1.79 English only. Here we have a game called Splash Jump, which is just a block jumping game for 59 cents English only. Interesting, this might be the lowest price I've ever seen a game, 59 cents before you hit free. Right, if we hit that one.
Fresh man of melons and potions,
And then can't really do anything else. Here we have a game on Steam called Dragon's Vengeance, which just looks like an RPG Maker game. $4.49, English only. Honestly, it would save me breath if I just called it an RPG game. Here we have a game called Driving Simulator, which just looks like an asset flip game. I don't know why none of these screenshots loaded. $2.99, English only. I am getting Google Chrome telling me it's time to reboot Chrome. More and more that happens. It's frankly getting increasingly annoying.
Flash of metal, a silent night. Crazy, crazier.
Now I know your scent.
Driving Simulator, $2.99, English only, nothing of interest there. Here we have a game called Alteraise, which
Did you send this breeze?
see. Apparently you get a massage and that causes an out of body sensory experience. But no, by the looks of it, you're massaging someone else and that causes an out of body sensory experience. Which, that just seems insane. This clearly seems to be an asset flip game that's in VR. It's underpriced at $7.99, English, Spain, Spanish. Yeah, it's just like out of nowhere. Why would you even need to explain it? Why not just start in the Egyptian environment if that's what you were showing?
I shall give birth to a new world.
Save yourselves.
Stop!
The blueprints.
Think we got another victory here. Next we have a game on Steam called The Legend of the Chili Tree, which looks like it's a platforming game. It has some polish to it,
There's
enough
no one
that there
else I'd
might
rather
actually
lose.
be a chance. $11.24 is fairly expensive, English full audio. I guess I'll put this on the follow list. I could definitely see it being fairly boring though. Like, it doesn't seem like there's too much going on here. But I'll wait for some reviews. Or 6 months until there are new reviews. Whichever happens first. Of course, I'm saying 6 months, but the only way that 6 months idea happens is if I can actually find enough free time to do follow list cleanup. And even though I've gotten lots of victories today, and in fact I'm doing great, as if they've adjusted the matchmaking or something,
Mother, father, come on.
it's not saving me any time right now when I have so much news backlogged. And it's not like a ton of news even happened over the weekend. I just had a bunch of games left over from Friday. Moving on, we have a game called Twin Balls, which looks like it's just kind of a physics avoid collision game. Arcadey style scoring game. Seems like you maybe just slow down their fall so that they don't collide, and that's it, and they spin by themselves. Which doesn't, I think, really change too much in the physics of the game. Let's see, 59 cents, English only. Here we have a game called Cliche Adventure. When you name your game Cliche Adventure, though, odds are it's not going to be that interesting. Visually, it doesn't look that interesting. If you told me this was like a 1980s game, I might be willing to give it a chance. $9.99, third-party EULA, English only. Yeah, I just don't think there's any relevancy here for something that looks like an 80s game. Next, we have Little Adventure 2, which is more zoomed in and actually looks more interesting because of that. So I guess the real question is, could we find Little Venture 1? It's English and Russian, full audio, $2.39. So let's... Do you have Little Venture 1? Yes, we do. It is positive. It came out April 23rd, 2021. So, problem here we can see is that Little Venture 1 and Little Venture 2 are basically the same game, released incredibly close to each other. So even though it's gotten a minimal number of reviews, it hasn't gotten over 30 reviews, which makes it irrelevant, and now it is suspected of committing some intentional confusion and deception on this part, which does not make me want to play that game. Here we have a game called Dichotomy, which is some kind of multiplayer local co-op space survival game from the looks of it. If any of the screenshots want to load. $10.99, single player online PvP, English only. Yeah, I suspect this might just be a 3D version of Among Us, which, in all fairness, nobody has even really been talking about Among Us. Yep, that's all this is a 3D version of Among Us. Yep. And see, that's kind of the problem, is we're constantly nowadays getting these flash in the pan games, and then you get clones 6 months later, and the clones just have no relevancy at all, because the flash in the pan game isn't even interesting. Well, suppose you either do this or you do this. Next, we have a game on Steam called Grime, which was rated very positively and actually looks like a game. It's a dark-looking platformer hack and slash game with its own unique art style. Yeah. $22.49 is fairly expensive. It's also a game called Vigil the Longest Night, so this might be a spiritual successor to that. Bunch of languages. Fast-paced, unforgiving action-adventure RPG. That's a lot of descriptors. But I kind of believe it. Like, this actually looks like a game. Let's check out Vigil. Vigil's on the following list as a side-scrolling Metroidvania game that came out October 14th, 2020, which is a reasonable space between two different games, and it's a different type of game. What I'm also noticing is that in between the point I put it on the following list and now, it has gotten over 1,700 reviews, so obviously I can move that to the wish list, but that does highlight that I have not been successful even going through the wish list from October 14th of 2020. So yeah, that whole system, it's not really on the side of succeeding, but it's definitely more on the side of feeling like I've failed to meet my own ambitions there.
Should I drop this lightning
Is that how you treat a lady?
And see, I don't know if I had like some other employee or something, if I could have them going through the follow list and making decisions for me.
Will
Which inherently, that's the problem with hiring anyone, is that either you're going to have to completely trust them and their decision-making process, which you pretty much can't ever do, or you're going to risk giving up some freedom and
Flash of metal, a silent night.
in exchange for gaining some time.
Shutting down.
Is that how you treat a
Yep.
lady?
And that is kind of the problem with a lot of employer-employee relationships, is you hire someone hoping they'll save you time and that they'll save you the having to make decisions, and then unless you just don't care, they'll make decisions you wouldn't make decisions in directions you wouldn't, which
Make it fashion.
if you don't care, then you become one of those managers that just doesn't seem like they care. So that then gets back into a catch-22.
Take it from here. The things I do for fashion.
Moving on, we have a game on Steam called Zoe Lai SCAD Game Studio. This looks like a very nicely animated game. Seems like you have an invisibility cloth. Interesting. An imagination-powered quilt that makes you go invisible. Interesting. It's free. English full audio.
This here's the shady part of town.
The question here is a student project? It doesn't seem like it is, but it's free. Interesting. It's from Savannah College Art and Design. I have to assume that this is a student project and put it on the wish list because of that. Savannah College of Art and Design, I guess, would be SCAD Game Studio. Once again, we see an example of a student project making a game look more interesting than more than half of the games we see on a daily basis. And I really have to question, is that just a factor of a case
Oops, my hand
where the video game industry is just so homogenized that it cannot even find room in its own lineup to do something that looks visually different. Does every game now have to be a Halo Master Chief main character, or a military character, first person shooter, and arguably we might be getting to the point where half the games are, this is going to be a SJW representation minority character that is in prevalence, where it doesn't make sense. In this case, it's the exact opposite, I would say, because if you're making a story about a little girl using an imagination-powered quilt, like, obviously you would want to focus and depict on a little girl. Could have been a little boy, certainly, but I'm not going to complain it one way or the other on that. It would be very weird to have Master Chief wearing a quilt, running around having an imagination filled experience. No, I would say the truth is that we probably are still much closer to every character being Master Chief than we are every character being
Not sure if I can do
the amputee female on that Battlefront game that came out a year or two ago. Like, if anything, I think they found gamers pretty much rejected all of that. Well, I was doing well with this, so I'm going to stick with this. Moving on, we have a game on Steam here called Disenchantment Story, which looks like it's a JRPG game with some somewhat scantily clad anime girls, but it really just looks like a cheap RPG, really, in reality. $9.59 Chinese only. That probably implies that there is not even going to be any adult content in the game because it's Chinese. It's just going to imply and have some lewd outfits. See. YouTube put out a new best practices for children's and families content, which I guess you'd want to read if you're making children family content, which maybe that indicates at some point they're going to try and get back to putting ads on that kind of content. I wouldn't be surprised if no, they aren't thinking of doing that at all. But yeah, YouTube is constantly trying to make sure that things targeted to children are appropriate for children, or at least mostly appropriate for children. Yeah, I don't know if I want to discard 2 cards for that.
We won't give him an inch.
From what I hear, Susan Wojcicki went on to Wall Street Journal's website and put out an article that was allegedly pro-free speech but also pro-censorship, in the exact same talking out of both sides of your mouth type article that was also paywalled for Wall Street Journal. When I think it is reasonable to point out that the Wall Street Journal was the creator and pusher of the adpocalypse, so you're literally sleeping with the enemy at that point, and Susan Wojcicki seems to love to do that and has done it several times before. On the other hand, I mean, maybe this is just claiming falsely or ridiculously that she's playing 5D chess or something, but maybe she is actually playing like a 5D chess concept there, where she's bribing Wall Street Journal and other platforms that are dying to appease them so they don't write hit pieces attacking YouTube. Yep. There is logic in the old saying, keep your friends close and your enemies closer. So I'd almost cut her a break on that. I would take Susan Wojcicki much closer to task as far as just how she seems to not really be in charge or leading YouTube in any direction, good or bad, and how YouTube seems to just kind of meander and randomly change its mind on a whim instead of having strong leadership, which would be the one thing I would want to see it potentially grow, is a stronger leadership scenario. Okay. Do this, I guess. And then do this.
My wings and heart cry for blood.
And then I guess you evolve for this.
Flash of metal, a silent night. Let me show you how it's done. Let's play. Don't be shy.
On the retreat.
Yep. Gamasutra says a Blizzard vet and Undead Labs founder urges employees in the industry to unionize. This would be Jeff Strain, which, okay. It's it's seeing some slight progress to see people who are actually in charge of businesses being willing to support unionization as a concept, or the conversation of unionization really happening instead of just middle step concepts of doing walkouts and protests, but then never really getting down to actually going through the process of forming a union. Which,
I have to get strong.
Yeah.
Stronger than I am now.
My loyalty is ironclad.
okay. If I was to do this and then buff that up,
Fresh manna melons and potion fruit.
and then store 3 and draw a card, I could do that, or I can just attack. I suppose it's worth mentioning that Streets of Rage is at its 30th anniversary, if that really matters to people. Like, that is the big question as far as, is Streets of Rage really a game that people really care about? Streets of Rage 4 came and went with very little reception, positive or negative. Here we have a game on Steam called Muriel Saga, which
I'll show you what
looks like a very dark JRPG, and the animation doesn't look quite good enough.
My loyalty is ironclad.
It's $10.49, single player, English only. Well, I want to leave this, I guess, on the fall list. It's already on the following list somehow. Just to see if maybe people receive it well. But I suspect, looking at these screenshots, that this is not going to be received that well. I could kill everything on the field. I could do this.
Excess.
I can do this, which is more important. Banish it.
What you need is a nice roaring flame.
Okay.
My armor's been pierced.
I've still got far to go.
Look at all my armor's been pierced. Kindling.
Okay, that worked fairly well. I did not realize that this deals 5 damage to a random enemy follower. Here we have a game on Steam called Street Racer, which feels like it's a Mario Kart clone trying to invoke Street Fighter characters in a Mario Kart, like Super Mario Kart, or just Mario Kart game. Yep. $7.99, English full audio. Yeah, doesn't really look like anything of interest to me.
Speed things up.
Here we have a game called Creatures of Ether, or Aether, which looks like it's kind of a
My loyalty is
player versus player card battler game with some gacha elements. Free to play with in-app purchases and a third-party account, English, Japanese, and Chinese. Definitely not a pretty enough game to make me want to play that style of game with all the microtransactions and such. Okay. We could evolve. That would do 3 damage to all enemies.
There is no escape from the apocalypse to come.
Your head and body must part ways.
The gods will know fear. My armor's been pierced!
We'll just go and play this too. That way we are safe. Although I think we're gonna win. Next we have a game on Steam called Who Stole My Beard, which looks like it's a joke, kind of point and click adventure, RPG type game. Not point and click RPG. Weirdly, there's a lot of visual polish there, and it's zoomed in more. $8.99 English only. I don't think I can just immediately reject this game. I think I have to put it on the follow list. I probably will reject it, but they've just oversold themselves with the polish, with the thumbnail, with the zoomed in visuals, enough to deserve a second look. Let's see.
Gather round.
My loyalty is ironclad.
I could kill everything now, and I may have to. Otherwise, I'm gonna take like 12 damage. I mean, I could kill that. Certainly.
Hey everyone, lights out.
And I can just make sure this doesn't do 3 damage.
This outcome pleases me. The world cycles on.
Let's see.
You must make the first move. Take only what is necessary.
Yep. That worked out fairly well. Next we have a game on Steam, Fantasy Dungeon VR, which, while it does look slightly more polished than your average VR Fantasy Dungeon game, it's still fairly low polygon and doesn't look particularly that interesting. I just don't think I ever want to play a dungeon crawler, Skyrim, fantasy type game in VR. $12.99 English only. I think Skyrim is in VR, come to think of it, so if I was interested in playing a if I did have any interest in playing a Skyrim type game, it would be Skyrim.
Just don't get it.
Do not seek what is not there.
I don't see any reason to play that.
My armor's been pierced.
So I think I can win next turn. If he can't heal himself. I guess if he does heal himself, maybe I can't win. Next we have a game just called Speed Punk, which is another one of these games where you're flying around in cars, and when you're doing that in a city, it just is way too visually busy. Like in a lot of ways, this feels like Mario Superman 64, where you're flying around rings. Free to play with DLC, English only. Yeah, I just don't think there's enough of a polished game there. Okay. 3. Yeah.
My armor's been pierced.
This would give me Storm.
I lowballed you.
Rage empowers me. Cowardly creatures. I will abide.
Oh man, I might very well lose.
Thunder roars like a beast from the void.
Like the
did.
moon on the
If I had
waters.
played this, would I have won? I'm very well may have. I was just not paying enough attention, obviously. And of course, that's the problem, is that as long as I'm trying to cover video game news, I will just not be paying as much attention to the Shadowverse as I should. Next, we have a game on Steam called Duck Flight Simulator, which looks like it's Duck Hunt in 3D, which is not a terrible thought. Honestly, we have seen maybe 2 or 3 attempts at something like this, and they've never been that good.
Sword deserves a pointed response.
$3.99,
Enhance.
English full audio. I'm gonna put it on the follow list, see if people review it. Now, part of the problem, I think, is that Duck Hunt as a game actually wasn't that good. It just came for free on with the NES when you got the NES that came with the Zapper, which was, I think, the most prevalent version you would have gotten. But yeah, the Zapper as a concept didn't really go very far, and Duck Hunt as a game didn't go even as far as something like Hogan's Alley, which far fewer people actually played. Next, we have a game on Steam called Meteor Storm, which looks like it's just a Asteroids clone, maybe a Galaga clone. Space 2D shooting, one way or the other. $4.99. Let's see. According to Gamasutra, Riot is opening a new Shanghai studio to double down in development in China. This is the League of Legends maker, which, yeah, we'll see how well that works.
Good guinea pig.
Although, at a certain point, if you are doing business in China, you might as well have your own personal branch in China, because they require all the data and all of the code to be in China anyways, so they can spy on their citizens and other people. Although I'm not 100% sure you actually can own a business in China if you're not a Chinese citizen or a Chinese entity. So the actual legalese around that may be more complicated than it seems. And in all fairness, I'm not sure if like some Saudi prince can own a business in the United States. So, I mean, that might just be true in most countries, that to be the true owner of a company, you very possibly have to be a citizen of that country. That would make some sense.
How short-sighted.
Moving on, we have a game called EVA Universe, EVA Verse, which doesn't look like it has anything to do with Neon Genesis Evangelion. It honestly just looks like it's a Second Life clone. Free, MMO, single player, third party account, English only. Nothing of interest there. According to Gametsu, Doki Doki Literature Club Plus Physical Edition has been delayed to September 21st in North America. Which, yep. We're gonna hear more and more of that kind of stuff. Draw a card and do 3 damage. And that wouldn't be enough.
Each life has a different value.
Seems like they're delaying it because of COVID, they say. Video Games Chronicle says Astro's Playroom developer commits to continue family-friendly games in its new form, which I guess would be fine. There's a lot of Asians here. Like, a couple people have been, it seems, photoshopped into this photo. Actually, I think all of these people, or a lot of these people, have been photoshopped into the photo. It is based in Tokyo, so I guess that would make sense that it would be Japanese or Asian people. But yeah, it definitely feels like this guy and this guy have been photoshopped. This guy feels like he might have been photoshopped too. Like, how important really is it to have a group photo these days? I suppose is an interesting question to ask. Because I guess particularly Japanese companies probably think it is still fairly important to have group photos. I could do this. And then I can do this.
Will it be crimson
I can
red?
attack here, I guess.
Did I do okay?
See, here we have a game on Steam called Power Slide Legends, which looks like it's just a racing game. Early access, $11.99 English only, third-party account with PlayFam. There's enough visual polish here for a racing game to deserve a follow. No real telling, though, is how interesting this game would be until some people review it. Here we have a game called Medium, the Psychic Party game, which... seems to be some kind of party game, like a Jackbox game. $9.99, though, for that single game. It says it's single player with online PvP. Yeah, I don't think this is the kind of game for me, unfortunately. Like, it doesn't look terrible. I wouldn't be surprised if people do enjoy this. We are getting to an interesting point where I'm not sure how many people even have friends anymore that they would want to play games with. But yeah, we'll just have to leave that one for other people to discover. What it doesn't seem like is any kind of tarot card reading game simulator or anything to actually let people feel like they're being a medium. Next we have a game on Steam called Venatura, which looks maybe like a Pokemon game if the graphics were really, really bad. $9.34. Odd pricing, English only. Yeah. Definitely doesn't look good enough.
The hour of judgment has come.
See, next we have a game on Steam called Metal Faith, which looks like a Chinese kind of stealth game. 3D adventure puzzle game is what they're describing it as. $5.99, English and Chinese. Yeah, I couldn't even tell you what kind of game this is. It seems to be kind of all over the place. Okay, do I have anything here that would save the day? Okay. Yeah, my only hope is that this would do that would do enough damage, but probably not. So lose.
Like the moon on the water's surface.
Yeah. In news that'll probably irritate me, OBS Open Broadcast Software has formalized their code of conduct in their GitHub, which the third line is please be kind and courteous. There's no need to be mean and rude, which in all fairness, like I have certainly seen in like GitHub and other open source projects a level of there have been a lot of people who just don't respond to you in a nice way, or just don't respond to you at all.
Oh, yeah, I smell trouble.
Programmers are not people who have been taught to have good manners. Like we used to have things, we used to have jobs for people with good manners, and that was like butlers and maids and such, and they only had good manners because they were being forced to have good manners. That has long since been forgotten. But yeah. Friendly and safe and welcoming environment regardless of level of experience, gender, identity, expression, sexual orientation, disability, personal appearance, body size, race, ethnicity, age, religion, nationality, or other similarity characteristics is like the first thing they talk about. And I don't know if there ever really has been any problems whatsoever. But at a certain point, maybe you just now should have. Maybe there always should have been rules. I guess that is very possibly what we're getting down to, is that instead of it's just being no shoot, no suit, or no shoes, no shirt, no service on the front of any storefront, maybe it is just you must read and agree to our terms of service and code of conduct before you can even come in. Just think about how many freak out videos have been posted to the internet of people going into fast food restaurants and just completely acting inappropriately. Of course, inherently, no rules is really going to stop somebody from freaking out and acting inappropriately anyway, so it's kind of pointless to even put the rules there.
No beast could manage this.
No!
Telltale Games, here they are showing off the Batman Telltale game. And honestly, yeah, this cartoony art style for the Arkham games would probably be way better. Let's see. They retweeted something they probably shouldn't have. Where a fan has made a Poker Night at the Inventory 3 thought as a fan art, which includes some anime girl that may be from Doki Doki Literature Club, and then Frieza from Dragon Ball Z, and then a character from a Cartoon Network show, I think. And then I can't even really recognize who this is, nor what or who this is supposed to be. But honestly, they shouldn't be retweeting this in the first place. So the first thing they say is, we've got to say we have no plans for anything to do with Poker Night at the Inventory at this time. We're focused on delivering the goods with the Wolf Among Us 2 for now, and we have nothing to share at the moment. That said, we respect the sweet artwork. And see, I don't know why you'd even retweet that, because That's just gonna make more conspiracy-minded people think that yes, they do have plans or they're putting out fillers. It is still important to mention that Telltale Games now is not the Telltale Games of old, so they did not in any way, nobody that works at Telltale Games now worked on Poker Night at the Inventory, as far as I know. Maybe there's one or two people that got hired over, but not a lot. Nor would I really even say that Poker Night at the Inventory was a good, successful game. It's probably one of the best poker games ever made. I'll give you that. But the problem is there's just too much voice acting that's required for a game like Poker Night at the Inventory, where you're not going to even get a good return for the amount of money you would have to invest on, as far as the writing and the voice acting that has to happen there. You would have to get some kind of sweetheart deal with some form of non-SAG-AFTRA union voice actors who would just be bored at their house telling stories to make Poker Night at the Inventory really make sense. Or you get a nice contract with something like Spotify, where you can play poker and have music playing in the background, but you could always have done that, so you're not really getting a big useful thing there. Maybe you get some nice deal with like Audible with audiobooks, and then you could get interesting chapters of stories being read out while you're playing poker, but even that doesn't really make a lot of sense, and it wouldn't merge well. So if you were going to make a Poker Night at the Inventory 3, it probably should just be some weird characters, a lot more characters with a lot less to say as far as dialogue. And maybe you could pull that off, particularly if you had somebody like Funimation or some voice acting group who have nothing better to do with their time and were willing to work really, really cheap.
Smiles are the best medicine.
Okay.
You're done
Let's see
for.
if we can save ourselves here.
Faith is an expensive business. No, the smiles are not free.
And hit.
You're in good hands. Save yourselves.
And hit. Moving on, we have a game on Steam called Offescape, which just looks a little too low polygon-y. Made in Unity, it says this is probably the worst depiction of what you could do with Unity, honestly, though. $4.24, English only. Let's see. Gematsu has Shin Megami Tensei 5, detailing more characters. Shin Megami Tensei 5 has been putting out like a new Demon a Day teaser, but I've been skipping it because it's not really that interesting. It does look like the art in the Shin Megami universe is a little bit darker than you'd expect, but this is at least actual characters that they're talking about instead of just random monsters you're going to see in the universe. This is interesting school outfits. I've never seen one where they have like patterns on their jackets before. That seems fancy. If anything, every Japanese school outfit I've ever seen has been designed to make every didn't look as bland and as generic as possible. And see, here you have some artwork for some characters, but they don't really look like this. They're not that colorful in the game. And I don't think that it's a case where you just fight these demons once. I think it's much more of a grind. And it's probably a turn-based RPG on top of that. I think Shin Megami Tensei would definitely be one of those games that
not a soul without sin.
would be better
The real battle
suited as a
Punish the wicked. Let judgment fall.
real game, as a abridged game is what I meant to say there, instead of having all the grind. I would like to see a lot of these JRPGs have some kind of cheat or abridged format where you just fight one instance of every enemy once. Video Games Chronicle apparently got their hands on the Nintendo Switch OLED version, and they say it is a striking improvement for portable players, which, yeah, I guess the graphics or the monitor on the original Switch is probably not that great. But also I think most kids wouldn't recognize the difference. Let's see. Gamma Sutra says Ubisoft and Bungie are following a lawsuit against the cheat software developer Ring 1.
Oh Lord.
I feel like we had already heard a story like this, so I'm not sure if this is a different cheat soft developer they're suing now. A company called Plarium acquires the Finnish mobile studio Future Play to diversify its game portfolio.
This is where I truly shine.
Okay. Yeah, we have a game on Steam called Kaboom, which looks to me like it's a 3D Bomberman game where you player versus player Bomberman. Early access, $6.29, online PvP only. The visuals get in the way. Like, this green versus this green makes it very hard to see that this is an elevated platform that you can't walk on. So there's just some, while there's some polished visuals in general, there's some bad color choices and color palette decisions. This was $6.29, English only. Here we have a game called Synth Run, which just is an infinite runner game for $3.39, English only. Here we have a game called Gate, Grid and Token Environment, which looks like it's some kind of board game clone.
Happy for the both of us, sister.
I just don't think there's enough visual polish here to interest me. I heard something about a boycott of GameWorks. I don't know the reason why. Don't really care. Like, I don't play the GameWorks board games with the little figurines and all of that they sell. But I figured I would mention that I have heard of it. I suspect there's a decent reason why people would want to boycott it. It could, though, be as simple as something like them recognizing that they've been overcharging their players and not supporting the community as well as they should have been. Here we have a game called The Illusion, which looks like a horror point-and-click game. Looks like it's slightly polished. Puzzle game. Doesn't seem like there's too much variety in it, though. So I guess it would just come down to price, what it makes it to the follow list. $14.99 English for Anio. I guess it's not going to come down to price, because I was going to say, well, $14.99 is hardly cheap. But I'll put it on the follow list. Well, Raven Games. This is the first one from Raven Games. even though there is a game called The Raven from a different publisher. Here we have Grimm's Tales, the Air Collector's Edition from Big Fish Game. $8.99, English full audio.
It's all the same to me.
Here we have a game called Draft of Darkness, which looks like it's a card-based Darkest Dungeon clone, for lack of a better term. The visuals aren't polished enough. Early access, $8.99. I'm going to skip that. Here we have a game called Telenovela, which that's an interesting idea, certainly, to have a Spanish soap opera, which is what telenovelas are, and they tend to be even crazier and more extreme than your standard your standard American, United Statesian
Well, that's too bad.
style. But it is. I guess we'll do that.
Damage critical.
Yeah, I don't think though I could.
I pray that you will be
I can
freed
put
from
this on the follow list, but I just don't think a telenovela in English without supporting Spanish is probably going to be that great. Nor do I think a visual novel that is using apparently cut out pictures of real world people to make kind of a telenovela makes sense. I feel like this whole thing would have to be really long. Let's see. And when we look at some of the other games they've made, there's games all over the place here. Particularly standing out is Rock, Paper, Scissors Champion, which is mixed into Jesus Christ RPG trilogy, which they're saying is mostly positive. I imagine this is a troll game and it's getting rated positively because it's a troll game. I imagine there's some YouTubers out there that have played that. So yeah, I'm gonna take it off the following list. I don't think there's just enough faith and potential there. Next we have a game on Steam called Oatmeal, which that definitely does not look like oatmeal to me. And the rest of this just looks like garbage asset flip stuff. $4.24, English only. Maybe we can get lucky and this will be our last game. Here we have a game called Wilma's Dreams, which looks like it's a dog in a platforming game, or a werewolf in a platforming game. It's an interesting thought to put your dog in a game.
Cannot shackle me.
It's an interesting contrivance, but really it just means you want to make a werewolf game. And this definitely is the werewolf with like an 8-pack. So, seems like you might be a bit of a furry. $3.99, English only. Yeah. Yeah. If anything, I would imagine that game Stray, where you play as a cat in the post-apocalypse, is going to be much more of an interesting depiction of playing as a cat or as an animal than playing as a werewolf in a 2D platformer. And we have seen several other games where you play as cats and it works fine because they're just anthropomorphic humanoid cats. Or we haven't seen too many instances where you actually play as an animal and that is a dog or a cat, and in that process you actually experience something new or different or good. Moving on, we have a game called Ironfell, which can't even tell what this is. They're calling it a 4X game. The visuals are not descriptive, to say the least. It's tagged as an MMO, English only, free, for the price. Here we have a game called Leave Me Alone, which seems to be you roll around cleaning up messes of different things. Kind of like a Roomba. I don't think there's a real game experience here, because it's almost like a Katamari Damacy experience where you'd roll around a big ball. But yeah, I just don't think that's really what you'd want to have happen. And the idea, at some point in the future, we might have robots that just are designed to clean up all of Earth once humans have left the planet for one reason or other, is probably a ridiculous thought, because give the planet 100 years or so to recover and it will decompose almost everything by itself, and there's no reason to try and scoop up trash. And there are definitely some materials that won't decompose in 100 years, but a lot of things will, and we're more and more trying to use the more decomposable materials. So I can't imagine this game Leave Me Alone for $6.79, and with its several languages is interesting enough to make me want to put it on the follow list. Here we have a game called Sapling, which seems to be just an asset flip game or walking simulator. Free, English only. I guess the price is right, so check it out if you're interested. Next we have Beat Souls, which is tagged as anime and music. And yeah, it definitely does feel like it is a fast-paced music rhythm game, which means I would never really play it. Let's see, $9.59 English and Japanese. What I'd like to know is how many songs are in it. 30 stages. Yeah, I'd like to see some reception to this, but this is definitely a game I wouldn't actually play. So for that reason, I'm going to put it on the follow list. And that reason only is I'd just like to see the reception. See, let me make sure this next game is YouTube family friendly. Yep. Next we have a game called Oshirabu Waifus Over Husbandos, Love or Die, which seems to be a visual novel with these girls preparing a wedding, I think is the idea. Let's see. $11.69 full Japanese. They're calling it a shotgun wedding, which usually means that the woman is pregnant. And see, here's a very different, more Asian style of pink dress that you would wear in a wedding, which you really would not be encouraged to wear that at someone else's wedding, which I assume that's the case, is that she's the bridesmaid and she's the bride, but maybe not. Maybe it's just two brides. I guess I have to put this on the follow list. It's already rated very positively. I think I probably wouldn't ever pay the money to play a game like this. Although it is a different kind of story for sure, and there is, I think, something to be appreciated from having a different kind of story like that, because
I shall give birth to a new world.
if you consider it, that very rarely do we have instances of of focusing around the actual wedding as an event or the romance as the marriages begin. Usually it is like the first date, the first kiss, or just the first bedroom encounter that most romance stories end at, or they just give you a generic and they lived happily ever after. In all fairness, though, weddings tend to be completely unconnected and unrelated to how marriages go, and they're overemphasized far too much. Moving on, we have a game on Steam called Night Shift, which seems to be an escape the room puzzle game, kind of asset flippy. Doesn't look visually polished enough. It's free to play, single player English. Here we have a game called Golf for Fun, which seems more like a mobile game just being ported to PC. Doesn't look particularly good. $11.19, English only. Here we have a game called For Evelyn, which seems to be an RPG game. I like that it's zoomed in more, but it still doesn't really strike my attention as being very interesting. Let's see, $9.99, English, allegedly full audio. I'm gonna give this one a chance and put it on the follow list. Here we have a game called Alzheimer's Memories, which seems to be a point-and-click adventure around the idea of Alzheimer's, which $1.99 English and Chinese. I'll give it a follow, but I imagine it is trying to tell a story that anybody with Alzheimer's wouldn't actually be able to articulate, so it's probably not accurate depiction of Alzheimer's. Next we have a game called Tower of Doom, which looks like it's a stand-in-one-place VR shooter with several different locations. Seems like it's a little too visually busy. I think particularly for VR games, you can't just have such a huge amount of visual assets. It kind of has to be a little bit more simplified and a little bit more empty. It's $14.99 English, allegedly full audio. Yeah, I don't think that would be a yes. Next we have a game called Domino Sandbox. There was one of these that I put on the follow list a long time ago, and I don't think it ever got reviewed well enough. $2.54, third party EULA, English only. I'll give this one a chance. Part of the problem, though, with any idea around it, making a Domino Sandbox game is the fact that you're probably not that interesting. It's not that interesting of gameplay to lay down dominoes. What I've seen is some like homebrewed, hacked together devices that would physically actually put down dominoes, and if you could create, say, a thing you could 3D print to control some kind of Arduino style device that would put down dominoes, and then the software was sold on Steam and was its own emulator, then that might be an interesting idea. I don't know what file format you would even use, if that would have to be a new file format, or if it could just be a 3D print STL file or something like that, or some kind of vector graphics visual file. But yeah, if there was a device that was mass produced to put down dominoes, and that might be an interesting toy to say, hey, we've got this device that will put down dominoes, and we've put out this software on Steam and on cell phones that lets you draw where the dominoes go, and it will just drive its little remote controlled car to that place and put down the different dominoes. Even at that, though, you need a massive amount of room, and it's not as impressive until you get into major large scale builds. And even then it's barely impressive.
Or your tears.
Moving on, we have a game called Turbot, which looks like another one of those parkour jumping games that really have nothing else going on for them. $24.99 English only. That is ridiculously too expensive. Here we have a game called Luminite, which looks like it's a top-down dungeon crawler of no quality. $4.49 English and German. Here we have a game called Alone, which is a precision platformer with it all being in shadow. $3.59 English full audio. Interesting that they're comparing this to Lego Lord of the Rings. It seems like they are just so random sometimes as far as what they compare it to.
Did I predict wrong?
Next we have a game called Matchsticks Coffee Break Club, which is a matchsticks game that looks visually polished enough. It might have been a tablet game or a cell phone game at one point, but the visual polish is there for a puzzle game. $1.39 is not asking too much. English, Portuguese, Brazil. The only real question would be, how many puzzles are there? 60 puzzles. It's a little low on the number of puzzles. You'd like to see it to be 100, but $1.40 is also not a high price. So unless this game is just incredibly crashy, I think I'm happy to put that on the follow list.
You were done for.
Punish the wicked. Spare the innocent.
Alright, that's what I wanted to do. Here we have a game called Fall Tower, which is just a platforming game. Infinite Climber, 99 cents English only.
My raging flames have
Here we have a game called Scientific Shutdown,
No!
which, I don't know. Top-down arcade shooter, feels like it's more of an isometric shooter, more than a top-down shooter, and just doesn't really feel like it's anything of interest. Coming soon. Well, I guess if it's coming soon, I don't have to actually put it on the follow list at this point. Here we have a game called Funny Truck, which just looks like a physics joke game. 69 cents English only. Here we have a game called Alien Destroyer, which it looks like it's just shooting aliens in one scenario. 69 cents English only. Not VR. You could have maybe thought it was VR. Okay. What can we do?
Look to the zenith, for there I will rise.
The real battle begins.
Embrace them in your prominence.
Hit that. Play that. Still have a ton of games. We had too many games left over from Friday. We went 4 hours on Friday, and we've already gone for 3 hours today. We somehow had a higher number of games for the past couple of days. Here we have one called Bizarre Mutation World, which doesn't look visually polished enough. $1.99 English only. Here we have one that's all in Asian characters and looks like it's a weird shoot 'em up. It's free, Japanese only. Here we have the Mysteries of Renko Togawa, Murder on the Marine Express, which doesn't look visually polished enough. It's $4.99 English, Spanish. I'm gonna say no to that one. Here we have a game called Chimes. Good, I can see the beginning of the end. Finally. Chimes looks like a asset flip player versus player game. Online PvP, free, English only. Does anything save me?
I shall give birth to a new world.
I don't think anything does.
I bestow upon you my lightning.
Here we have a game called Shell Out Showdown, which looks like it's a player versus player game, but I can't really tell between the mix of different visuals. It seems like you're playing as vending machines fighting each other, which seems just extra ridiculous. $7.99 English only. Here we have a game called Wolf Adventures, which looks like a pixely point-and-click adventure of no interest. $2.99 English and Russian. Let's see, here we have Historic Fighters, which looks like nothing of interest for $9.99. Let's go through some of this. Grand Theft Auto 5 has shipped 150 million copies according to Take-Two. I guess that's important news. Sparks Asterix is hiring an environment art team leader in Ho Chi Minh City, Vietnam, if you want to work in Vietnam. Video Game Chronicles says 2K says it will announce an exciting new franchise this month. The mystery game will launch before April of 2022. I am dubious about getting hyped around 2K announcing a new franchise, particularly if this new franchise is just something that is a spin-off of something like Borderlands, or something that feels a lot like a Borderlands new franchise with different graphics and different people making it. This exciting new franchise very possibly could be a nail in the coffin for what's left of Gearbox. Or it could have nothing to do with Gearbox, certainly. That's a possibility too. Battlefield 2042 short film will set the scene for the all-out war. The teaser trailer has been released for Exodus, which premieres on August 12th. What does it premiere on? Where would you watch it though? Interesting. This article does not say where you'd actually watch Exodus if you wanted to, so maybe they haven't announced that. We already talked about Grand Theft Auto 5 selling 150 million copies, which arguably isn't even that many copies. I think we've seen 300 million. Maybe it's 300,000 I'm thinking about, though. I could be making a tenfold error. Gamma Sutra has a job listing for Bytro Labs GmbH, looking for a lead game designer in Hamburg, Germany. Here we have a game called Bustafellows on Steam, which looks like a more polished visual novel from P-Cube. $35.99. That's typically the price you end up getting overcharged for a good visual novel. Japanese full audio, English subtitles. I'll put this on the fall list and we'll see what the reviews say. Certainly price could be a major factor as to a reason why I never get around to actually playing a visual novel is that they're just too expensive. Here we have a game called Kuchi, I guess is how you pronounce that. Kuchi? And when you have 3 C's in a row, how do you pronounce that? This seems to be basically asset flips of very pixely pictures that other people painted in some kind of surreal depiction of art. I don't think all of this is just Van Gogh, even though clearly this is Van Gogh here. It's $7.99 English only. It's not VR. Once again, feels like again it would be. Here we have Hodl Simulator, which is just a stock market meme game for 99 cents English only. I don't think too many people are even memeing still around the whole stock market stuff and the game stonks. By the time this got released, there's still some people that are memeing around that, but not a lot. Next, we have a game called What Time Is It? Which looks like garbage. $1.99 English and Chinese. Here we have a game called Low Blocks, which just looks like a Tetris clone. 79 cents in English, Portuguese, Brazil. Here we have a game called Eternal Secret. That looks like a visual novel that isn't very polished visually. $2 English and Polish. At least the price is right on that. They're not trying to go for $10. But yeah, I just don't think there's enough of a game there. Next we have a game called New Slippery Samurai, which looks like some kind of weird joke Japanese game. $2.54. English, Chinese, and Japanese languages. Let's go home on this. Let's see, next we have a game called Vesper, which we have about 15 more tags. This looks like a dark but visually polished platforming adventure game. Action adventure game. I think it deserves a follow. $17.99, bunch of languages. Yep, I want to see some reviews on this. In all fairness though, this might very well be a game that is just going to be way too difficult to actually try and play because of it's just black on blackness. Limbo pulled off that trick, but plenty of other games I don't think have succeeded on doing this. Next we have a game here that looks like it's just a match 3 game. Some cheap Chinese idea. Free, Chinese only. Next we have a game called Wardwell House VR, which looks like it's realistic photos making a kind of walking simulator in VR. $4.99. English allegedly full annual. Yeah, I don't know if people really want to do a horror game in VR with hyper realistic photographic imagery. That seems fairly dangerous. Let's see. Next we have a game called In Bento, which I guess is a puzzle game to make a bento box for kids. $3.99, bunch of languages. I kind of want to put this on the follow list because it is an interesting concept on a Tetris game. It's not quite exactly Tetris, but yeah, I'll give that a follow. I think we had already talked about the Epic Game Store summer sale, so I'm not going to talk about that again. So we'll close that tab. And then move that around and click on that. That should be our final run. Here we have a game called No Longer Home, which seems to be kind of a visual novel in 3D experience. LGBTQ. Interactive fiction game, this is how it's described. $11.99 English, Japanese, Chinese. That's an odd selection of languages considering how the characters very much look to me to be Westerners, but whatever. I'll put it on the follow list. I suspect this might be one of those games that just never gets reviewed. Next we have a game on Steam called Destroy the Shogun, which looks like an 8-bit game, 8-bit platforming game. $6.29 English only. That's too expensive for what it's showing me, and it barely looks like there's much game here at all. Next, we have a game called Operation Insanity, which I think is just an asset flip space shooter game. $12.74. Both standard and VR versions of the game combined for sale. English full audio. Yeah, I just don't see anything here that makes me think this is anything more than an asset flip, though. So I'm going to have to say no to that. Here we have a game called Anopec, which looks like it's a Doom clone with different art style. They're calling it a Metroidvania. I don't know how you make a Metroidvania from the perspective of a Doom game. Like, Doom had keys. You would get keys to get into different areas, and Doom had different guns that you would collect. But at no point would I make Doom a Metroidvania game where you have to platform and find different doorways or anything like that. Doom had secret passages, even. Like, the angle of the camera changes how you describe a game quite often, a lot. $5.59, bunch of languages. I think I have to skip this. I just don't see anything that interesting. Let's see. Next we have a game called Vomitorium, which looks like it's a Doom clone that is much more of a horrific visual experience. Once again, though, this is from the exact same developer and publisher, and they're describing it as a Metroidvania. And they're inspired by the artist Zdzislaw Beksinski. If I pronounce that, it's probably Zdzislaw or something like that. This is $9.99, English only. I still just don't think I can say yes to this. No. Like, I will say the graphics here look better, but I still don't want to play a Doom clone. Particularly a Doom clone that can't even call itself a Doom clone for some reason. Next, we have a game on Steam here called Furball, which is apparently just asset flipped anthropomorphic animals playing soccer. It's free to play with in-app purchases, English only. Nothing there of interest. Next we have SYDE Rugby League Simulator, which looks like garbage, for free, English only. Next we have a game called Sovereignty, which seems to be a game focused around actual tea and RPG gameplay around the idea of tea leaves fighting each other. Let's see. That's a funny concept. I don't know if it's implemented well in this gameplay mechanic. English only, $13.49. I'll put this on the follow list and we'll see. But it may very well be a one-note joke of a game. Here we have a game called Mini Madness, which this definitely isn't the Hot Wheels game, so it would be very funny if this game somehow got better reviewed or received than the Hot Wheels game. Let's see. It's $7.99 English and Polish. I'll give it a chance. It's probably nothing, but I'll give it a chance. Here we have a game called Stranded B, which clearly is just an asset flip survival game. Early access English German, third party EULA, $12.59. Here we have a game called Cupid's Place, which doesn't seem like anything of interest, just asset flip garbage. Playing as a Cupid might be an interesting concept, but you'd have to put a lot of work into it to make it work. $4.89 English only. Let's see. Next we have a game on Steam called Billiards Dungeon, which yeah, I don't think there's enough of a idea here either. Playing as a billiard ball, flinging yourself into colliding with other billiard balls that represent monsters. yeah. At a certain point, that becomes a stealth game or a puzzle game where every room you enter has to be solved in a certain number of moves to get the best score. $19.99 English full audio. Yeah, I don't think there's enough thought put into this idea so far to make that deserve a follow. Here we have a game called The Prabbits Happy Dogfights, which looks like a side-scrolling shoot-'em-up game. I guess it's mostly shoot-'em-up, but it also seems like it's player versus player more than anything. It's coming soon, so I don't have to even consider it. Here we have Horror Tales The Wine, which is also tagged as a Metroidvania game, but at least I could believe it in this case, although it still kind of feels more like a walking simulator game more than anything else. $11.99. Whole bunch of languages, allegedly full audio in each of them. I'll give it a follow. Probably won't make it to the wish list. Next we have Snooker Loopy Pro, which this doesn't look like snooker. It seems to be more a puzzle game than anything. And they can't even take a picture, capture the screen. They're pointing a camera at their monitor. $4.74 English only. I feel like if you really are going to be snobby and curate the games on Steam, at least look at the videos and say, hey, if this is a video where you're pushing, where you can't even capture your own game, then you're not technically advanced enough to be selling a game in our storefront. Like, Walmart certainly doesn't let people take like pictures of TV monitors of the commercials and hand those pictures as the advertisements that go around their products. That they maintain a level of quality of appearance, and any other store would do that. So Steam is, I think, fair to do that also. Next we have a game called Green Steel, which just looks like a Tanks clone, $2.99. And then here we have a game called Get Packed Fully Loaded, which I think is a player versus player game, so I can't cover it. $19.99. Bunch of languages. I guess it does say it has single player, but it's so multiplayer focused. I can tell that this is that game where you're packing things and working with people to pack things up into a moving van, or at least that's the general idea. Here we have Final Fantasy 4. Final Fantasy 4. Is it still not out? Let me reload this tab. Yep, it's still not out. And then that means this will be Final Fantasy 5, which we'll put on the fall list. And you can definitely see that these Final Fantasy, even like 5, is not really getting anywhere close to what people think of when they think Final Fantasy. It's not until you get to like 7 or 8, which the remake of the most recent Final Fantasy 7 or 8, whichever one is being remade at the moment and rebooting the series, pretty much indicates that they have abandoned trying to tell any of the stories or remake any of the previous Final Fantasy games, which is probably for the better because they probably don't have much they could say there. Here we have a game called Unbound Worlds Apart, which looks like it is a platforming game of some quality. There's some visual polish at least on it. $16.99, bunch of languages. We'll put that on the follow list. And then finally we have a game called Star Revealing Way, which Starveling, I don't even know how you pronounce that. Regardless, the game does not look interesting. 59 cents English only. And that does all the tabs that I have. Let's see. Yeah, that is all the tabs that I have open. So now I'm going to go through my Twitter feed and see if there was any new news. And then we can call it a stream at 3 hours and 20 minutes. And well, that wasn't as quick as I'd like it. I never am going to have a stream that's as quick as I would like it, obviously. The PlayStation Now games for August include Nier Automata, which, man, am I just dropping the ball? Certainly, as far as getting around to actually playing that game. LibRetro says there's been some big improvements for RetroArch on the Wii U users in the next stable release. Enhanced compression of cores, much faster content loading. Of course, the Wii U was such a rarity that I imagine you can't get a Wii U fairly cheap to then try and hack it. So I don't think it would really be worth your effort as an emulation station, particularly now when the Steam Deck itself would obviously be a better device for an emulation device, and much more portable, because the Wii U was not portable, even though it seemed like it. Yeah, you would be better. It'd probably be just as cheap to get a slightly hacked / damaged version of the Switch and hack that to play emulation software than it would be to try and get the Wii U. And this is going to be, I think, really easy wrap up today because there's not been a lot of news, which does mean maybe we'll have a slow Wednesday unless a bunch of video game news comes out. Yep. In the United States, we are right around the time when all the kids are going back to school, so there might be less of a push to release games if you're focusing your games around kids, although I would say for most games they aren't focused around kids though, so it might not affect much at all. So yeah, Video Game Chronicle says the PlayStation Now games include Nier Automata and Ghost Runner and Undertale. Let's see. A game came out, UFO KO Tower Defense, which we don't really need to consider. We have a game called On Scene, the Horror Stories of Fred and Karen, which just looks like it's a joke game that's not visually polished. It's all dark, 59 cents. According to Gamasutra, in-game spending on Take-Two games jumped 15% during Q1 of 2022, which that doesn't sound great. And then Niantic has named the Director of Developer Relations ahead of the Lightship ARDK launch. This is the Pokemon Go maker, which I guess they needed a Director of Developer Relations. Well, no, a Director of Developer Relations would have nothing to do with public relations, would it? He worked with Oculus for over 6 years before that point. OpenCritic says Rainbow Six Siege is hosting a tie-in event with Rainbow Six Extraction, if that interests you. And then Nier Automata, again, PlayStation Now. And so that was all the news that happened over the course of the last 3 hours. So that's going to be it for this stream. As always, I ask you to like, share, subscribe, comment, and watch every second of my videos. If you want a friend or follow me on any social media sites, there's a whole bunch of links down below. Thank you for watching. Have a good evening.